Well, welcome everybody. We have a very special treat for you today. I'm sure you heard his other parts webinar that we did just recently, Terri Cowan. Today we have Steve Cowan, who is so business smart, so phenomenal. He is one of my biggest mentors. I know Tina can speak for that as well on so many levels, not just professionally in the salon industry, but in the school world, just as an overall person. Steve founded his company, Professional Salon Concepts, in 1983. And since then, he was Inc. Magazine's list of the top 500 privately owned companies in America. They've been named Modern Salon's Distributor of the Year. They have the Diamond Award of Excellent in Customer Service by American Salon, and that is just to name a few. So, Steve, welcome.
Thank you. That's quite an introduction. Thanks, Sean.
So,
in 1983, I was in the 5th grade, and it was just a project, that I did for school.
So talk a little bit about where, how you fell into distribution to where you are now, and what that journey looked like for you.
Okay. I grew up in the distribution business. My grandfather had a beauty and barber distribution in Illinois that my father took over, and that I grew up in and thought I one day would own and carry on the family legacy. I was one of those kind of nerds that probably still am a nerd, but I knew at age 9 what I wanted to be when I grew up. And that's coincidentally when I started working in the family business, which few people know, that I used to, because my dad was a workaholic and I wanted to be with him and have a relationship. I went to work with him at 3 o'clock every morning before school.
Wow.
And then went to school after that, and then went back to work after school. So I did that until 16. I was 16 years old and I graduated high school early. And I decided I wanted my college to be in the beauty industry. So I went to work for my dad full time. And at 18 years old, my dad sold the company that I thought I would one day own to another distributor. And basically what he sold was me. I had to work there in order for him to get paid, excuse me, the money that they offered. And that was fine. I just considered the money I'd invested in dad's company as my college, and went on. I did not like where I landed, where he sold the beauty industry, where he sold his business to. So I was there long enough for him to get his money, and then I went to work for a major manufacturer in the field. I went to work for Redken. Worked there for about a year and a half, 2 years. And in one of my customers was a old-time barber supply distributorship in the suburbs of Chicago, 50-year-old company at the time. And the founder had passed away. He was one of my customers at Redken, and his nephew and his son-in-law had asked if I would join them and kind of be the inside, because they wanted to be outside selling. So my first job was to bring up all the product that had accumulated over 50 years from the basements and garages of a Chicago suburb, and get it into an on the street business. And we did that. They had no accounts receivable. It was an old Italian man that carried what people owed him on a notebook, that in a little spiral that he carried in his back pocket. So we never really collected anything that was owed to him, unless somebody came forward and said, I owed Tony money. So that was I spent 7 years there.
Wow.
And at 26, decided, because of what I saw in the beauty industry, I decided that I wanted to do a company the way I believed it should be done, inside the salon industry, that was from my heart, or I wanted to fail and still be young enough to do something else. So I founded PSC at 26, and went we started, how can I put this? I met Sam Mercado at a Zig Ziglar Born to Win event.
Wow.
And as luck would have it, we were sitting rows apart. And I'd just seen him on TV when he won the world championship in hairdressing. And a week later, I'm there in the same room with him, which didn't mean a whole lot maybe to other people, but it meant the world to me. And I ran up to him at the first coffee break, and he did what most hairdressers do to somebody who's a distributor. He blew me off as quick as he could, even though I wanted to have coffee with him and know everything. You know, I wanted to be his best friend, but that wasn't the plan for right then. So by the afternoon of the first day, Zig had us count off in sixes. And as you might imagine, all the ones were together, all the twos, etc. Well, Sam and I were partners for the rest of the program, the next 4 days. And we, in fact, did become friends. And, excuse me, and Sam came in a year later to do a program at my previous company. And he was relentless with wanting to tell me about Paul Mitchell. I had him under contract to use whatever I put in his hands. And he, every time I went in the model room, he was using Paul Mitchell. And I went down to close the model room at 2 a.m. There was only one. I had a group model room. If you can imagine, Tina, I had the Chadwicks, I had Jimmy and Kitty Victor, I had Ann and Gary Bray. I had all of these people, Tony Beckerman, former Sassoon, and Sam, who was the reigning hairdresser of the year, world style competition. And so there's only one still working, and it was Sam. And he still had, believe it or not, he still had a can of Paul Mitchell foam in his hand, the sculpting foam. And I said, Sam, you're killing me. Show's tomorrow. You're under contract, my friend, to use whatever I put in your hands. And he said, don't worry. I've been telling you that. Don't worry. But he said, I'll tell you what, if you'll give me 5 minutes, I'll tell you what I want to tell you about Paul Mitchell, and then I'll put it away for the rest of the show. So he said, especially since I've won the competition, every manufacturer has given me product, offered me product, wants to affiliate with me, and would love for me to carry their products in my salons and in my school. And he said, of all of them, what I've chosen is Paul Mitchell. And he said, main reason is out of loyalty. Paul Mitchell taught me how to cut hair. Mm-hmm. And so he did the show. After the show, 2 days later, I gave my notice that I was leaving that company and starting up my own. And first phone call I made was to Sam, and I said, Sam, tell me everything you wanted to tell me the other day, but I was too stubborn to listen.
Wow. And
so he did, and he told me about John Paul, and John Paul and I were at Redken at the same time.
Wow.
And he was a big deal. I was a little deal. Okay. I mean, he was always a big deal. And he was in charge of the Redken schools, believe it or not, at that time. It's funny how life makes a full circle. Mm-hmm. And so I knew the name. I knew he wouldn't know me. I knew the name. Long story short, chatted with John Paul, and we wound up being named his distributor for Illinois. And that was the first brand that believed in PSC and believed in me mm-hmm. and the vision that we had. And so to maybe directly answer the question about 1983 and where the journey started, I wanted to become, in our initial business plan, the goal of PSC was to become the salon's best business relationship. And what I meant by that was we wanted to be their first call. If they had staffing issues, if they had a walkout, if they had banking issues, if they had accountant issues, if they had whatever it was, we wanted to be their first call. And the thought was, if we could be meaningful to the salons, that they would be loyal to us.
Hmm.
Because I came in on kind of a sour note. The previous company that I was with, we built as an education company as well. And at that time, every distributor had the same product lines. So we had Redken, so did several other people have Redken in the market. We had Fermisi, so did others. We had other brands and so did others. And what our competitors would do is they would allow us to do all the education, and then they would steal the customer with a discount. And so one of the premises was that anything that we carried at PSC, we would have the exclusive on. So not only was I asking John Paul and Paul for the distribution rights, but I was asking for exclusive distribution rights.
Mhm.
And we did that with every brand that we have represented. Our goal wasn't to be a typical beauty distributor. Obviously, by wanting to be their best business relationship first, that was important. The other thing was that we only wanted to do business with exclusive brands. We only wanted to pioneer brands that we started from ground up on. I didn't want to take a brand away from another distributor that had it. We wanted to do something unique. Our promise was to educate first before we placed product. We also wanted to stand behind everything that we did 100%. If somebody bought something from us and wanted to return it, it would come back. We would take it back and refund their money. And it's just what we've done now for going on 40 years. We also wanted to be in a business where we set an example for service, so that if someone ordered today, in almost all cases, they get the product the very next day in less than 24 hours.
Wow.
And so that became one of our tenets. And you know, the net of all of that was we set out to what I believed was possible to change the salon industry. And you know, we wanted to improve the lot of the hairdresser. And you know, I had, in my years leading up to PSC, I'd been in the homes of manufacturer owners, and they were palatial.
Mhm.
I've been in the cars with distributor salespeople who were driving cars that were better than their customers. And I've been in the back rooms of salons, and their back rooms were filled with product that they no longer used, couldn't sell, and didn't want to return to their favorite guy that came in once a week and drank coffee with them.
Mm.
And yet they would, when I would talk to them, they would worry about being able to make payroll next week. At the time we started in '83, the average salon was not profitable if you took the owner's contribution out. And still, you'd find many of them today that are not profitable if you took the owner's contribution behind the chair out of the business. And there was something very wrong with that. I said, you know, the people who sell it one bottle at a time should not only make the most, which they do per bottle, but they should be the wealthy ones. And so we set out that if we couldn't help a salon increase their service volume, their take-home volume, and their overall profitability, they didn't need us.
Wow.
And we wouldn't ask for them to continue to do business with us, because nobody needs another person walking through their door, and no one needs another person taking money out of the salon unless they've done something that works for the salon. We have forever started at our customer and worked backwards to our business, not the other way around. It's got to work for the salon first. It's got to be good for the hairdresser first. And if it is, then we're going to be involved with it. So that's kind of where we started. As you all know, many mentors along the way, many people that I've learned from along the way, and continue to learn from, and continue to hold high as mentors. And it's it's an incredible business that has resilience, that has spirit, that has people with huge hearts that deserve to be wildly successful.
Mhm.
Yes, amen. Exactly why I got into the industry right there, because being around people with huge hearts, like that just fills my bucket every single day. And I love that you said if we ended up meaningful to the salons, they would be loyal to us. And I started thinking about that because as a leader, I want to talk about, because your leadership is something that Brian and I, my husband and I, and Sean are so attracted to. You and Terri, just your leadership and how you lead and your confidence that you have is just absolutely incredible. And we've been thinking about this a lot, of really building an even stronger, using the quotes, wellness culture of things that we've been learning along the way through the whole pandemic, everything that's going on. But could you imagine if we could be meaningful to our team, they would be loyal to us and they wouldn't want to quit our companies, right?
Right.
And so how do you do that, Steve? Like, how do you stay meaningful to your team?
Well, first of all, at PSC, we believe, and I believe this for every business, by the way, it's just, we manifested at PSC. We have three customers. We have the obvious customer, who is our salons and hairdressers. Salons have the obvious customer, which is the guest that sits in their chair.
Mhm.
But we also have each other. All the members of the team are we are customer to each other. And that has to be through and through the business. It's a value system that has to be present, to where it's just as important for me. If we all work together, it'd be just as important to me at delivering for my salon customer as it would to deliver and be there for you, Tina, and you, Sean. And I couldn't be a team member here if I was great to the salon and I was a son of a gun to you, and I didn't even remember Sean's name, right? I mean, it's just that people wonder why they have the cultures in their company that they do, and you've got to be able to do that. And then our third customer are the vendors and service providers that come into our business. Everybody from the mailman to the UPS driver, to our insurance people and our attorney, all of the people that come in must be treated as if they were guests and they were our customer. And so we've had people. I mean, we've had people that have been able to sell millions of dollars worth of product to salons, and they were a horrible teammate. They didn't respect the people that were inside, making it easier for them on the outside. They didn't respect the manufacturers that came in. They thought they were better than the manufacturer that came in. They couldn't work for us. They couldn't work for us. Didn't matter that they brought in that kind of sales. Even though it's hard, you get hooked on the income, right? Salons get hooked on their top stylists.
Right.
But we've got to see those three customers clearly and have a servant's heart regarding all three, not just the one they like. Did that answer your question, Tina?
Perfectly said. I love that you said that, because it's all about how, I mean, one of the best ways that you can learn about a team member is how nice they are to a service provider. Maybe it's someone that cleans for the school, or maybe it's the business, or someone that is a hostess or a waitress or a waiter. And so, I think that's one of the biggest things, is trying to figure that out. And I think one of the things that I've done wrong over the years that I want to get better at is hiring slow, because I feel like sometimes we just throw someone in because we're afraid that the rest of the team is going to get bogged down. So we just have to hire a body. But instead, let's take our time. Let's have a bunch of different interviews. Let's really see what type of person they are, because they could end up being toxic in the company, which so often happens because we don't take our time. So what is your process? Because one of the things that Sean and I talk about in the Next Level Salon Leadership is we kind of really go right to the hiring, because that's where they're really struggling. But what they don't realize that it's actually a leadership issue. that they
Mhm.
have that's causing this hiring problem, right? That they have. So can you talk about that for you, Steve, and advice that you give salon owners?
Sure. First of all, it's a situation where we say all the time, and I apologize for one of the words I'm going to use, but it just crystallizes it. We say, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Yeah.
Too many times we've negotiated off of that, and
Mhm.
we've always paid for it. Those are the people that we invest in, and they don't work out because they really weren't. As you said, you were worried about the overall wellness of your team, and would they get bogged down, and so you say yes. It's not even too soon. It's you say yes at all. It's that you said yes
Yeah.
at all, and that tends to be a real challenge. The other thing is that I agree with you 100%. The number one challenge that salons still face today is the finding, hiring, training, and maintaining of qualified staff members. So it's finding them, it's then hiring them with the right process. It's training them with the right process. And all of that's changed recently. And then the maintaining. How do you maintain them? And how are they as important 5 years from now as they were the day you hired them? How are they as important 10 years from now? And what are their needs? And what's the difference in their needs 10 years from now than it is today? So how do you service the entire team? Because the entire team is watching. And I think that salons got bogged down when they were growing, and they put all of their effort into the entry level staff position, all of their energy, all the owner's energy, all of the artistic director, if they had one, the salon trainer, all of that was about the brand new hire who hadn't yet really contributed a thing to your business. And then you've got the whole team that's watching and saying, hey, I've been here 5 years.
Mhm.
What's next for me? I mean, I love next level salon leadership. What's the next level for me? How do I get to that next level? When do I get your time?
Mhm.
And so that becomes a real issue. And salons have to learn to address that. They also have to learn to invest time in their top. How many horror stories do you hear from salons that say they lost their best stylist, or they lost two of their top performers? Well, quite honestly, how much time have you spent with them in the last year, last 6 months, last 6 weeks?
Absolutely.
And they're leaving. We say that staff will not stay with you one day longer than they believe that you can develop their career.
Yeah.
So the
So sad.
moment they think you can no longer develop their career, or you're not interested in developing their career, they're moving on. Because then money becomes the only issue. We have to remember, they joined you. They didn't accept a job. They joined you. And you were a big part of what they joined. That leadership is a big part of what they joined. And as long as they believe in your leadership, as long as you're accessible to them, as long as you're still investing in them as you were when they were brand new, differently, but they still have to know that you care about them, and you're going to continue to grow them. Really, really important.
Mhm.
So, in the finding, from being school owners, both of you, salons still don't get that right. We took an approach in our schools, right, years ago, come and get them. We still have people calling saying, put my name up on the board. I'm hiring. Or they call up and they say, can you send me one out? Oh yeah, I'll put them in a UPS box and ship them to you.
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't work that way. Come get them, come in,
Mhm.
invest in them as at the very beginning of their career. Number one, they'll never forget you. My school director in Chicago, at the Chicago school, Kathy Cunico, I walked into her beauty school to give a talk at my previous company when I was probably 28 years old. People remember who comes into their school
Mhm.
because it's the same people so much of the time.
Mhm.
that connection that was made there, she wound up working for me at the previous company. She worked for me at PSC. She went and raised her family, worked in a school system near where her kids were going, and then rejoined me in the school and came up in the school ranks to become director. Now, that's all from a come and get them attitude. That's all from I wasn't there to find her or hire. I was there to talk to students, to future professionals. But that connection was made. So in our business, our business is a relationship business through and through at every level. And we've got to put ourselves out there to allow a connection to take place. We've got to connect to the people that we want to join us. And then we've got to build a relationship with those connections and train them, right? And maintain them by showing that we still care all the way through the life cycle.
Absolutely. I love the whole concept of your business and what you stand for, and how you start with the customer and work backwards to us. And something that you said that kind of stuck out is you want to be the first they call. Whatever's going on, you want to be the first that they call. So being that we've had a very different past couple years, what have you seen that they're calling you on now?
Well, if we include the past, what they're calling us on now is people not wanting to work a full-time schedule. That's the number one thing we hear right now. You know, full-time somehow has become 20 or 30 hours a week. And we're having to have twice the staff in a salon to fill the salon hours. There's more guests than there are people to accommodate. And so it's, how do you do that? And to us, it backs all the way back up to when the pandemic started. And none of us had been through it. None of us had been through anything like that before in our lives. I tried to think back to the stories I heard when I was growing up around the table when my grandfather would talk about the Great Depression. And, you know, I grew up with my mom saying the salon industry is the safest industry in the world because people always need their hair cut. And even in the Depression, my dad put food on the table every night. And I believed that until we got to COVID. And all of a sudden our salons were shut down. So they weren't doing hair. They didn't need product. They certainly didn't need a salesperson calling on them. The business changed for all of us, for you in the salons, for us in the schools. We had to stand up e-learning overnight. And we did. And we had to totally rethink. All of a sudden, our staff in a salon thought about, what am I doing this for? And, you know, it was kind of nice being able to see your kids in the daytime. And it was, you know, it's kind of nice to be able to see their mates, their spouses. And that's true, but only as a juxtaposition. You know, maybe they weren't working smart before the you know, the pandemic, and now they went to the other extreme to where they can't work, and they liked some of what was here. They obviously liked what used to be in the salon at one time, and it's who led them back in the proper way to re-enter. How many guests still haven't come back to the salon? There's a lot. We only had 50% of the people to begin with that were going to a salon. Now we've got less than that because some haven't returned. We have people that got used to seeing themselves with natural hair, right? I mean, even some hairdressers are wearing, you know, natural hair with no color on it. Even some representatives for manufacturers that sell color are going around with natural hair without color in it. So, and that's just one thing. But this idea of, okay, are they really saying I don't want to work that hard? Or have we not thought through this in a proper way. We thought through what we had to do as a business. Let's think about that. What we had to do as a business to be able to welcome guests back in. We thought through it. We had to meet standards from both the CDC and our state and local governments. None of it was there really that said, how do we bring back a hairdresser? How do we bring back an esthetician or a barber? How do we make them feel comfortable in the business? How do we reposition so that they can work smarter, not harder? Because we had an opportunity for the first time in history of salons, we had an opportunity for a timeout. I mean, NFL, you get a timeout. NBA, you get a timeout. You know, in baseball, pitching coach goes to the mound, game stops. We could never stop our game to be able to really take a look at it from the street, to be able to take a look at it from our people's frame. So what we did at PSC was we started right from day one doing almost daily updates to our salons, to our salon population. We, and it's funny, I was just at a wedding in Ohio last week, 2 weeks, however long ago it was, 2 or 3 weeks, time flies. But there was a hairdresser from Florida over on the Daytona side who came up to me and said, I'm so glad that I get to meet you and say thank you, because I watched all of your videos during COVID. And I made my friends that are hairdressers watch them, and it made all the difference in the world to us. And nobody else was doing that. And we talked about it. Nick Arrojo was doing some of that as well. He was very good. But what we tried to do, our governor went on 3 o'clock, and as soon as he was done at 4 o'clock, that's somewhere between 4 and 5, I would go on. And Terry would join me on most occasions. But we talked to them about what do they need to be thinking about right now. We stepped them through the various areas of the salon from what they had to do to reopen to what could they do with the benefit of this timeout. And we helped them to be able to access the PPP loans and the employee retention credit loans, grants that were out there. And some state and local governments also had grants that were available to businesses. And so we kind of took them through, because my view is as soon as it gets too businessy or hard for most hairdressers, they'll back away saying this doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make that part easy. So we stepped through each step of how to apply for a PPP loan, and we were the first ones. It's amazing now because people are just now still talking about the ERC, and we were the first ones to talk about it, and in our industry. And a lot of accountants were against it. A lot of different people were, they would go to their accountant, would say, "Oh, that's not for you," and
Wow.
they felt like they had to battle their accountants. And in fact, there's a friend of ours from Ohio that I probably had to talk her off the ledge 5 or 6 times, where she kept thinking, okay, my accountant's right. Because every time I'd say, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a tax specialist, but here's who I've got the information from. I've got it in writing. You can have it. It's absolutely for you. And she finally was able to do that. But it was a year and a half after. Some people had to change accountants to be able to do it, because the accountants just weren't up to date. So we decided that we would help in that way, and in the only way we could during that time of COVID. So what they have now, in some ways, is what they prepared for. Whether some started emulating that same thing. They would do a weekly staff meeting on Zoom. Yeah, and think about it. We didn't really even know what Zoom was prior to the pandemic.
Right.
And now it's like Kleenex, right? It's like Coca-Cola. You could say Zoom, everybody knows what it is. Zoom used to be driving fast on the road. So, but you know that there's pluses and minuses about Zoom, right?
Mhm.
My sister, who's a PhD in the medical field, she said that the statistics prove that it takes twice as much energy to be in a Zoom meeting as to be in a live meeting. It taxes the brain twice as much. And it's because we have limited body language to read. It's harder to read facial expressions and twinkles in the eyes and all those other things. When you're boring somebody to death, it's harder on Zoom than in person. And so we have to concentrate that twice as much. So you do a full day of Zoom meetings and you're tired.
Yeah. No
You're
wonder why
tired.
I'm sleeping so good at night. I love this so much. There's so many questions that are spurring up for me, but I was actually coaching she's a nail tech and she owns her own business today. And she did when it got too businessy, she just like stops, she shuts down and she has like these excuses of I can't focus and it's just not for me. And I'm like, but wait a minute, like as a business owner, you have to know your numbers. And
Right.
so I think this is so common. You think of independent contractors, there's so many of them. You think of people that are suite owners, you think of people that are salon owners, right? That many have stylists that work in them, or maybe own several salons. We're coaching a salon owner right now that owns several, but yet doesn't truly understand their profit and loss statements and
Right.
doesn't understand their numbers. And I was one of those people long ago too, Steve. So talk to that business owner right now of what should they do? Like, what's the first step? Because it's not like you can just like shut down. Like, this is important. People's lives are at stake here if they're working for you. So
Yeah.
talk about that.
Well, first of all, a salon owner can no longer say, I don't like math.
Right.
You know what? Don't care. I don't know how the electricity works in a light switch, but I enjoy the light switch, right?
Yeah.
It's better than walking around in the dark. I don't have to know how it does what it does, and I'm glad of that. I don't have to understand how this computer is making this nice time with you and Sean happen. I don't have to understand that, but I can enjoy the benefit of it, right? I'm here, I showed up. They need to show up on the parts of the business that maybe they'll never particularly understand, but they'll learn how to work with it. They'll learn how to make it work for them. And that's really the intention. They can no longer say that. Second of all, they can no longer have accountants that don't want to understand the beauty business
Exactly.
because they set them back.
Mhm.
You've got to have an accountant that's willing to learn. So one of the things that we recommend is find somebody that works with other salons.
Yeah.
It's like, we did with Brian Clavitt, right?
Right.
He's our accountant for the schools. The fact that he does 50 or 60 or 70 schools all in our industry is so helpful to us,
Mhm.
right? It makes a difference. We don't have to keep saying the same things over and over again. We don't have to teach him that some of the business tenets that are in place. He knows them already. He's an expert in them because he sees all of us and the net effects of our business. Same way in salons. Too long, and even a great package like QuickBooks, which most salons will use at some point. It doesn't automatically give you separate entries for services and take home.
Right.
It doesn't automatically gather the things that are unique to the salon business in your cost of goods sold, where you're only including dollar producing employees and what you pay in taxes for those. And certainly your cost of retail goods is separate from your cost of usage
Mhm.
that are all cost of goods. And what cost of goods is as sales raise, as the top of the thing raises, these are variable costs that also raise.
Mhm.
And then break their statements down to the general and administrative expenses. What are the fixed expenses of the business? Your lease, doesn't matter. They don't care. I mean, they do care because they want to get paid, but they don't care how many haircuts, how many color, how many this, how many that. It's a flat fee that you've said you're going to be responsible for, whether you do a penny of business or whether you do $1 million. That's what they're going to get. Same thing with your insurances. Yeah, they might vary a little bit, but for the most part, they're a monthly fee. And there's a lot of them. See, the things for a salon, and I learned this from John McCormick at Visible Changes. And he would always say, when I first started getting to know him, he'd say it's a simple business, but it's not easy.
Mhm.
And I'd say, John, what do you mean by simple business but not easy? I can't, that you got to tell me something on that. And he said it's simple. There are very few double-digit expenses in a beauty salon. There are very few. If you get into that G&A, that section down there, rent, maybe, sometimes it's double digit. And that's it.
Mhm.
But he said most salons will look at that area. They figure they can't touch rent. They'll do everything they can to take a 3% charge of telephone or utilities and beat it down to 1.5%. And what difference have they really made in their bottom line? So they spend all that time there. This business, the part that's not easy is your big variable cost is up in that cost of goods. It's your compensation.
Mhm.
And so most people, that's the scary part. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to do anything with it. And now you've got Neil doing his team-based pay thing. It works for some salons. Good, and it's good for him. He's sustained his business for a long time. So it's obviously working for some salons. You've got other, consulting groups that are teaching their way, but our way has always been, we break the business down into the way it happens, one guest at a time in 30 to 60-minute increments. If you can't, as a leader, read your income statement and see it in a one guest at a time basis and be able to coach your people in a one guest at a time. Let's say we were having our year beginning meeting and you're both stylists and I am, let's say I'm a stylist and a salon owner. And we have this huddle and we look and we say, look at what we did last year. As an owner, mostly you speak in percentages. We're up 15% in sales. We're this, we're that, we're down 12% in expenses. We had a great year. Let's take a moment and enjoy that. And then we said, for this year, we're going to do another 15% increase. And we have our rah-rah and we shout out and I'm sure you would do your best cheerleader. Cheers, Tina. And we'd all leave that back room and we'd go out on the floor and take a guest. And we do the best we could.
Mhm.
Because how do you deliver 15% increase?
Right.
How do you know that? We already know hairdressers, if owners don't like math, hairdressers don't like math. So how are they gonna accomplish a 15% increase? Now I know you would both do the very best you could because that's who you are.
Mhm.
But there'd be a point where the best you could, you'd lose track of because it's not relevant to you on a day-to-day basis on a one guest at a time. So we break everything down to one guest at a time on the key performance indicators. And the way that we do that is, first of all, we say, who came in? Real simple, traffic, who came in?
Mhm.
Of those people that came in, how many of them were established and how many were new?
Mhm.
Right? So I'm going to see how many new guests we're getting. I'm going to see how many established guests we're getting. Then of the new guests, how many of them were referrals from other guests? Next thing we do is, what do we do with them once they came in?
Mhm.
Now, these things, these last two things, I could be giving a talk to the hotel industry. Because if people don't come in and sleep in their rooms, there's nobody for the restaurants, the bars, the mini bars, even the health center. How do they know if they need 2 ellipticals or they need 20 treadmills? They know based on their traffic, right? They're then going to look, what happens if they've got a full house and they've got no restaurant business or no bar business? That's going to be a big deal, right? So it's the same thing in a salon. Who came in? What do we do with them? And out of that, what we did with them, we would come up with what's the overall dollar per guest,
Mhm.
the service dollar portion, and the take-home dollar portion, which is retail. That came from Howard Schultz at Starbucks. Every time you see Howard Schultz interviewed, he's going to tell you how many stores he has. He's going to tell you how many guest visits he has. He's going to tell you what the average spend per guest is. And he's going to tell you about how frequently his guests come in. That's his business. Now, that business is so much like the salon, it's crazy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because they sell, I mean, they sell you coffee that's already made and drinks that are already made, but they'll also sell you the stuff to make it right down to the machinery, right?
Mhm.
So you can do that at home. You would think, why would he do that? We want him to have to come here. Well, you know what? You develop a coffee lover, you develop a coffee lover. Does he understand when traffic is down? Absolutely. If traffic is down, if this number over here who came in is down, we're going to do something to build that up. We're going to have a treat receipt. We're going to have a special. I mean, I went to, my son has therapies once a week, and I went to the Starbucks that I go to during his therapy so I can work. And it was closed last week. And
Mhm.
I remembered why it was closed. Because they were having a specialty coffee tasting with their coffee master to learn all about the differences in coffees, where they're grown, what their primary notes are,
Hmm.
what's their overall flavor. They were educating their guest how to be a better coffee lover. Now they closed their business down to do that, to have that special event for their customers.
Wow.
Now, I wasn't cheated because I went down the block, a block and a half, and went to another Starbucks and got my coffee. But when you really think about it, it's so similar to what we do.
Mhm.
So what do we do with them? That breaks it down to one guest at a time. For every guest I touched, I did this overall, this in service, this in take home. And then we dig deeper. So you got the 3 things. Who came in, what do we do with them, and we dig deeper.
Mhm.
The other thing that is what we do with them, other than what I told you about the average per guest, how many of those people set up a future reservation today before they left?
Mhm.
Any salon that we start with, or any salon that comes through our program, we suggest that's where they start. We've got all the stuff we're going to be doing behind the scenes, but where you start is, you start by telling your salon you're going on a 365-day-a-year rescheduling campaign. And we're going to, because guest frequency, if Howard Schultz is going to talk about it every time he gets in front of a camera, talking on CNBC and whatever he talks on, we need to talk about it. How frequently do our guests come in? How and how do we know that when they leave? See, he doesn't know that when we leave. We could come back tomorrow, we could come back later today, we could come back a month from now. But in the salon, we can know, because today before they leave, we can set up their next reservation. The only reason it's not done most of the time is we haven't learned the dialogue on how to do it.
Right.
If we teach the dialogue, they use the dialogue, it works, and they improve. Most salons already have enough guests coming in to be fully scheduled, but they're not, because they don't set up future reservations. So that's our kickoff point, usually. Then we dig deeper. And the deeper is, for every hour I work, how many guests am I touching? I'm going to work 40 hours a week and I see 20 guests. I'm only seeing a half a guest for every hour that I work.
Mhm.
Where do we start with our entry level people? They go from 0 to something. When are they promotable? Then we go from that to the next level. And at that next level, they've got an acceptable standard and they've got, what do I need to work toward? So if I've got let's say that I'm 50%, I see half a guest per hour. Before I move to the next level, I have to see 3/4 of a guest an hour.
Mhm.
Okay, so in the same 40-hour week, that's going to be about 30 guests instead of 20.
Mhm.
So I'm going to look for that. How much am I getting to that 30 guests per week? So that's one of the ways we dig deeper. The next way we dig deeper is how many services per guest
Mhm.
did I do? So total number of services, and then divide that by the number of guests, and you come up with services per guest. Somebody like Stephanie Kachelski, I ask her all the time, and she works literally only one day a month in the salon. So her guests, she averages between 4.5 and 5 services per guest.
Wow. Wow.
Which is a lot, right? But she's also got a very limited time frame, and she's working on the guests she wants to work on.
Mhm.
It's a little bit different. The industry average is 1.1.
Right.
That means for every 10 guests, we're doing 2 services. 1 in 10 is doing 2 services. We can do better than that.
Yes.
But if we don't measure it, and how does it happen one guest at a time, we're never going to get there. And then we do the same thing with bottles of product. So we have the bottles of product. How many bottles of product did I sell today and then this week? Excuse me 1 second. Yes.
Mom's getting in the shower.
Okay, you can go next. Daddy's got to.
Okay.
I love you. All right. So I've got Terry and Jack, my son, home with COVID. So
Oh no.
Oh, no.
yeah, Jack's first time having it, and Terry's third time.
Oh man.
Oh
It
my
really
gosh.
hit Terry this time. So Jack's almost better. So he's ready to be back in school.
Oh, let Terry know we're praying for her.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Goodness.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I know our time is up here. But
Okay.
I love this so much because
My
you're
favorite.
saying like just starting, measure it. And it doesn't have to be drudgery. It can be fun. Sean knows I turn everything very colorful and he always sends it back in color. And we do that for, all of our salon partners, all of our salon stylists, and they love it. Right.
Mhm.
But you can always measure different things. And I love that you said just going deeper, let's go deeper. And so how as we as a team go even deeper. And so this is so, so, so powerful. Steve, I know you're like a distributor just for an area, but I also know that you're available for coaching all around the world. So what is the best way for a salon to get a hold of you and to be able to book you as their coach?
Best way is to call PSC and ask for Jennifer. She's both Terry and my right-hand person, and left hand sometimes.
Yeah. That's amazing.
She is, the company number is 815-744-3384. Ask for
Awesome.
Jennifer and she'll work the schedule out.
Yeah, that's
But
perfect.
the one thing
And
I
know-
want anybody to know, and I think it's important for everybody that's a client of next level salon leadership, it's not an instant fix. It's not a magic wand. It's doing our homework up front, giving good, solid recommendations, and the salon making tons and tons and tons of action.
Mhm.
Right? It's not just knowing, it's what do they take action on. And so If it's the salon's got to be ready for that, right? That I hate to say there's got to be enough pain, but sometimes it's when they're in enough pain is when they're ready to change. And I don't wish pain on anyone, but the reality is, if you're ready to take tons of action and learn things about your business, that's when a coach can help. That's when any good coach can help.
Absolutely. Thank
Love
you so
it.
much, Steve.
Thank you both. I love you both.
Thank you. Love you. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Take care.
Bye-bye. All right.